I acknowledge the presence. I acknowledge the presence of our international president. I acknowledge the presence of other national officers, seniors, council members, our wonderful speakers that we have today. I appreciate our moderator, our chairpersons, members, partners, and friends. Thank you for accepting our invitation to join us as we hold this conversation. We are grateful for your presence and attendance. Now, looking at our theme for today, women's political participation is a must. It is something that we must be deliberate and aggressive about when we consider our challenges, patriarchal norms, limited access, political violence, lack of adequate functioning, funds, discrimination. We look at the inadequacies of the political structures. Yet we have to consider the position of women in society. Where are we today? Where should we be? Consider also the wonderful contributions that women have made towards building nationhood. And yet, our Constitution gives us legal guarantees, protections. We ought to be comfortable in this space. But our statistics speak a different story and show us a different narrative. We see the inequalities and the underrepresentation in leadership, in political and decision-making spaces. And this is most unfortunate. It is inadequate in our eyes at all levels of governance. FIDA Nigeria says the voices of women must resound at all levels. We must set the table and sit on it. Our voices demand to be heard. Underrepresentation is not a question of numbers. It's about justice. It's about equity. It's about effective governance. The journey from margins to mandate requires deliberate, sustained, and aggressive action. We must collaborate in action. All of us must put our hands together to ensure women's political participation. As we deploy advocacy, legal reforms, such that we can transform social attitudes, political cultures, and structures, we know that this is possible if we join hands together to make it possible. Collectively, we must challenge the stereotyping, all those issues and things that limit and inhibit women's participation. We deserve a better society. We deserve inclusion. We deserve women's political participation. And so, our amiable and wonderful speakers today who have agreed to share of their knowledge, of their experience, are here with us today to support us in this, to expand our knowledge, to encourage us to think outside the box and see how, working together, we can accomplish these ideals. I encourage us all to sit back and listen. Action, we must. Action, we must. To turn around this situation that we see around us. Welcome to FIDA Nigeria's webinar as we hold these very necessary conversations. I appreciate you all. Thank you. Mr. Moderator, you have the floor. We can proceed.
Okay. Very well. Thank you so much for your welcome remark and setting the pace for the conversations today. So just taking a ride from where, from some points you have raised about the challenges and the problem of inequality in Nigeria, citing political structures, that are available but does not reflect in any kind of way, women holding positions in these structures in decision-making places, uh, considering the unrecorded, participation and contribution of women in our society today. We have a group of people who make the decisions for the rest of the other people who are even opposite in gender, if we want to say so, and the rest of the other vulnerable groups. And those decisions do not cover the welfare of these people. And we know that, one of the things that we have pointed out in our work today is that these decisions do not reach or do not affect positively the rest of these vulnerable groups, women, children, and the rest. Is because there's no representation. There are no representation, not in the policies or not in persons, especially women in politics. And this is what is driving our conversation, this afternoon, you know, speaking on from margins to mandates, from where we have been marginalized. I'm so sorry when I say we, I already embody the conversation, and it does feel like I'm a woman somewhere. It's the passion, and I'm so happy about it. So we are looking, at women's political inclusion as pathway to gender responsive governance in Nigeria. And we have two uh, important discussants who are here present with us, and they will be talking on two closely related topics today to us. And so it will be my pleasure to introduce our first discussant who will be speaking on hold on, please. We'll be speaking on promoting gender responsive budgeting as a tool for justice, equity, and national development. She is by name Dr. Princess Olufemi Kayode, who is an executive director, Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, Ward C. We have this honor of inviting these speakers, especially her and our second speaker, because we have worked with them. Dr. Princess Olufemi Kayode is a leading criminologist and gender justice advocate, widely recognized as one of Nigeria's foremost voices on sexual and gender-based violence. With over 25 years of experience, she has pioneered survivor-centered and multi-sectoral approaches to SGBV response systems in Nigeria, including founding the country's first rape crisis center initiative in 2003. She is a fellow. She is an Ashoka Fellow. She currently serves as the acting executive director of the Ward C, providing strategic leadership on women's rights, access to justice, governance and accountability, and gender responsive policy reforms. Also has worked with government institutions, UN agencies, development partners, and civil society to strengthen legal frameworks, improve justice sector responses, and advance gender inclusive governance. She also serves on several boards, including the International Advisory Board of the Non in Three Research Center at the University of Huddersfield, UK, and is widely respected for her expertise, leadership, and commitment to survivor dignity. In her vast experience, she is going to speak to us on this small topic, but then that matters, a topic that matters a lot. You're so welcome to our conversation today, ma'am, and please, you do have the floor.
Thank you very much, FIDA Nigeria, for this invitation. It's a privilege, to be here with colleagues, people who value every day, who work every day to advance girls' and women's rights and dignity of women. And so, thank you. Okay, so I have the floor. This year's CSW 70 theme, it talks about ensuring and strengthening access to justice for all women and girls. Speaks directly to our reality in Nigeria. We have strong laws, but justice, of course, often breaks down at the point of implementation. That is why gender response budgeting matters a lot. Justice is not only achieved, by legislation alone. So it requires the budgets that fund the systems that the women rely upon, legal, shelters, GBV courts, whether it's mobile court or whether it's specialized courts, trained personnel, both in the police and the other response areas, as well as community-based services. Without these investments, definitely justice remains out of reach for too many. So today's conversation is not just about, it is so timely, it is central to the CSW 70 agenda and building a more just and equitable Nigeria. You can take me to the next slide, thanks. Thank you. So if you see the quote here, it says, whose lives are visible in our budgets? I mean, when you see a budget, or even the layman who doesn't understand much, when you look at a budget, the first question you're asking is whose lives are visible and whose lives are invisible. It can tell a picture of where the gender issues, the gaps and the lapses. For example, in many state budgets, you will find billions allocated to roads, but almost nothing to DB shelters, very little to the ministries that handle these issues of justice, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Women Affairs, depending on the state and the name of the ministry. And of course, psychosocial support is out of it. We're not even talking about the health and the medical aspects. So budget tell us who is seen and who is forgotten. Next slide, please. So what is gender responsive budgeting? This acronym GBR. It is definitely not a separate women's budget. In Nigeria, we often hear, oh, gender mainstreaming, but without budget backing, it remains a slogan. So what exactly is then gender responsive budgeting? First, I'd like to clarify, there's a common misconception that it's not a separate women's budget. But everybody thinks that when they say gender responsive, we're saying, oh, we should have a different budget that is specifically for women. But that's not the case. Rather, it is a process. It is a process that integrates gender into all stages of the budget cycle, from the planning, development, all the way down to the approval and the presentation and the approval. It ensures that our public system, spending and revenue decisions directly addresses the gender gaps that we see in society. Ultimately, this project, this process, this approach, it makes our budgets fair, more fair, effective, and it brings in everybody. It is very inclusive. And it ensures that, the public spending, like I've said, is addressing gender gaps. So GRB ensures that gender considerations are built into medium-term expenditure framework so that we can see how everything, it is not like an afterthought or thinking about, okay, now we can bring this in, but it is from the very processes of the beginning to all the way to the end. So who benefits? These are questions, three basic questions I'm like, who benefits? Let's apply these three questions to Nigeria. When we say who benefits, often urban men in formal employment benefits. I was sharing somewhere yesterday where I was talking about, tax issues where married women pay more tax than married men, those sort of considerations. So who is left out? Rural women, informal workers, caregivers, survivors of violence, for example. So what must change? Our allocations, our priorities, and our indicators that we're using to measure how our budgets, have been implemented. Next slide, please. Why gender responsive budgeting matters? It matters because, take for example, maternal health. Nigeria accounts for about 20% of the global maternal deaths. Yet many states, the allocations are less than 5% to their health, budget to maternal and reproductive health is less than 5%. That's one of the reasons why gender responsive budgeting matters. It forces us to align spending with what is the real needs of the people. Next slide, please. So we'll see, that budgets shape access to justice, to safety, to health, to education, and livelihoods. Gender neutral budgets often reinforces inequality because what we have. While gender responsive budgeting ensures that public money works for everybody. So it's time that we must start treating budgets as more than just spreadsheets. Budgets are moral and political documents. They show us line by line whose needs actually matters to our decision makers. Next slide, please. Student commitments. I mean, we all know Nigeria, we're everywhere. We are part of, we're signatory to many global organs, and we find that we are always quick, of course, to put our pen in, but when it comes to submitting to the commitments, it takes a while. Next slide, please. We'll see here that we're part of the Beijing Platform for Action, we're part of CSW, the Sustainable Development Goals, we're there. UN, we have this bilateral commitments with some of these international development agencies. So we've signed into everything. For example, under SDG 5, we are committed to gender equality. We signed to be committed to it. Under 16, we signed to commit to justice and, of course, strong institutions. So what gender responsive budgeting does for us is the bridge between these commitments and actual implementation. Next slide. In the African context, so look specifically, within the African, we're already seeing African leaders who recognize gender responsive budgeting as a vital governance reform. So can we go to the next slide, please? So we're seeing examples, we're seeing examples already from countries like Rwanda, Uganda, South Africa. And the example of Rwanda requires every ministry to submit a gender budget statement. And then Uganda, of course, has gender and equity certificates for their MDAs. And so this progress is directly linked to regional frameworks like the AU Agenda 2063 and the Maputo Protocol. And while implementation remains uneven across Africa, we'll find that, sorry, I need to stop this call and send a message. My apologies, please. My apologies, my executive chair, she's aware of this meeting, so forgive me, please, or forgive me. So while implementation remains uneven across, the African continent, it is incredibly promising that we're already seeing countries beginning to actually take to note this. And these are African innovations that Nigerian can adapt from. Next slide, please. So let's look at the Nigerian, policy landscape, bringing it back to our own. Nigeria has committed to, like we mentioned before already, several, frameworks on advance these goals. They've committed to them. The next slide, please. And we'll begin to see some of them, which have been mentioned before. We are there, CSW, we are the SDGs. Then, of course, our own in-house strong policies that have been developed. We have a national gender policy. We have the VAP Act. We have the Child Rights Act. And many states have passed their VAP laws, but you see, the issue is not just passing those laws, but is that there's no allocation for, in some states, single naira for implementation. And this is where gender responsive budgeting becomes very essential. So, but commitments on paper definitely are not enough because justice needs a budget. Our laws without funding are simply broken promises. Really very sad. So we have to shift our focus to equity. We have to ask ourselves again, who benefits? We must look at the bigger picture, at the national development, And the data is very clear. I mean, the data is clear. Investing in women actually drives progress. So without gender responsive budgeting, we are looking at Nigeria's missed opportunities and several examples of our gaps in development milestones. Lagos, for example, will see the Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, the SDV, is a good example of what happens when GBV response is funded. Survivors get real services. But in many states, GBV system exists only on paper. Justice, of course, is without funding, is injustice. And that's precisely what we are seeing in the country. We are very quick, we have this, when we rush, we know how to create things and set things up, set the committee up, set that committee up, and then, of course, then it ends there. We like the ruler bylaw thing, but we need to really be as committed to what we are saying we are with the money, and the money in the right places. So, like I already mentioned, if then the GBV response and services are not properly funded, legal aid and family courts, shelter, psychological support, these are huge money. For NGOs who have been doing this work, for example, like FIDA, Nigeria, who have been working in the legal area, you will know that we come up and we talk about the sort of struggles that we're going through when it comes to finances, where individual staff and individual, collectively and then collectively are putting our own funds into supporting survivors, even in acquiring new homes or new residents and things like that, even to feeding. Those are things that a gender responsive budgeting will have sat through the brainstorming to know that when we say we want to fund survivor-centered, restaurants, what is expected, whether it is for male or it is for female, and then we balance it out in the way the budget is being done. So we need to move from idea to actual practice. We need to identify key actors, their roles, and establish practical entry points for Nigeria. So if you look at the image there, you can see who benefits. Equality, you can see the way it goes. But for equity, there's a way to balance everybody up so we're all on the same level and enjoying the same benefits. And that's what gender responsive budgeting also supports. It creates gender, it's a gender blind budget creates gender, risk. But in equity, everybody benefits. You can see that everybody, whether they're young or they're middle, everybody is on the same level in terms of accessibility to what is required for them to have access to justice. So here when we move, we move here and we can see that how the budget tools, how these tools become, how they become, how the gender-based, gender-responsive budgeting becomes a tool for equity. In fact, infrastructure, we can see that without this, infrastructure ignores women's safety. Tax policies may burden low-income women, high-income women, seriously, because women, we're earning. When a man who is married is paying less, and then a woman who is married is paying more. The excuse is that the man takes care of the home. Everybody is on the same platform right now in terms of how a home runs in many homes. Care work remains invisible and then, of course, unpaid. And then gender responsive budgeting corrects some of the structural imbalances. I want to look at national development. You know that without women on the table, definitely it's not it's a struggle. Another way, we're still struggling as a nation. When women cannot work because they're also caring for children or elderly relatives, the economy loses productivity. There are ways that we have to be able to make sure that even when a woman is caring for this, they can still impute into the society. So Nigerian unpaid care economy is estimated to worth billions, yet it is invisible in the budgets. Gender responsive budgeting, of course, is going to look at, how women invest, investing in women will drive human capital, productivity, community stability, and of course, intergenerational process where gender equality is smart economics. It helps us to recognize, of course, and invest in what drives development. Nigeria missed opportunities. An example of missed opportunity happened during the COVID period. Those of us who work on gender-based violence knew that those of us who were in the social protection area were not given permission to be on the field. they gave permission to everybody, including transports, but we were not given anything. We also saw how underfunded health systems struggle to respond. These are missed opportunities where gender responsive budgeting could have addressed. Our National Assembly, and our State Assembly also will need to be looking into some more. Okay, I think, yeah, I've already mentioned some of these examples of gaps: underfunded GBV response, limited investment in care, they mentioned before, weak gender indicators in M&E, and of course, minimal gender analysis in the sector budgets when they are being presented. Next slide, please. So what can gender responsive budgeting change? When we're talking about this in Nigeria, we're talking about changing the everyday realities of our women and our girls, and of course, families. When you touch the lives of women and girls, you are touching the lives of families, which impacts on the nation. So this budget helps us to move from good intentions to actual impacts. We can begin to see the impact when we use this tool as a development tool to advance our nation. It means our budget will start reflecting real needs of our people, and of course, we rely particularly on public services the most. So we'll see better allocation of resources, more effective service delivery, stronger accountability from governance, improved outcomes for everyone. So from margin to mandates, which is what we're looking at. So we need gender analysis to be mandatory in our budget. Next slide, please. In our budget submissions, we need the you see make gender analysis mandatory, create specific budget lines for gender priorities, use sex disaggregated data, and strengthen monitoring and evaluation. This is how we will move from margins to mandates. So what are the key actors and their roles? Among key actors are National Assembly and state assemblies, and part of their role is they must demand that when they are presenting the budget, they need for gender disaggregated data. CSOs also must be able to track allocations and releases, and not just announcements. So it's been announced that this is what will be spent on this. Communities as well, which of course the electorate must be able to ask, where is the money for women's safety? Where is the money for women's health? Where is the money, the money for women's livelihood? So that everybody has a role. Professionals will also apply gender responsive budgeting tools, in their own work as well. Next slide. So what are the practical entry points for Nigeria? Some of them are budget call circulars, the MTF and sector planning, state level budgeting, and then of course state budgets. We have state level budgeting, which of course implies them implementing the VAP laws when we're talking about access to justice. And of course, local governments can integrate gender responsive budgeting into primary health care and community services. And of course, utilizing our national and then state gender policies in this. So what does success look like? Success is the funded GBV, response, access to really support. A lot goes into who is spending the money. Who is spending the money? So we're looking at visibility, visible care economy investments, gender sensitive infrastructure, transparent reporting, and inclusive development outcomes. And of course, with milestones and indicators that is easy for us to measure that, yes, we are advancing towards that area. And tapping, of course, into already existing African nations, like I mentioned, Uganda and Rwanda, who are already utilizing this in their own area of work. So let's see, when they say the theme leads us to the thought, a budget that ignores gender, of course, is not neutral, it is unjust. And then we're saying we want justice for women and girls, and then of course we must fund it. We must fund it. The police have to be capable, all that security, they have to cover everybody in the response system, the judiciary, the justice, everybody. the caregivers, the CSO service providers, the state's sexual violence, and all the SACs and all the different places, the shelters. There are states that don't even have a shelter, a single one. So we've got to commit to making sure that we are giving them the resource that they deserve. If we want national development, we must invest in the people and the people who drive them. So gender responsive budgeting is how we turn our global commitments into action and how we build a Nigeria, of course, where justice, equity, and development are not just aspirations, but they're lived realities and lived changes in our community. And the young generation that we have today are courageous and holding us accountable to really fulfilling what we promise. So with that, I want to say thank you to FIDA Nigeria for this platform and thank you all for listening. I look forward to your reflections and, of course, discussions and questions. Thank you. Over to the moderator.
Um, Thank you so much, Dr. Princess. Her voice is interfering. Okay, please just hold on a little bit. Okay. Okay.
Sorry?
Thank you so much, Dr. Princess, for this very insightful and thought-provoking presentation. You have, this is a course that takes maybe 3 months to understand because it's not just something we learn, it's something, gender responsive budgeting also is something of a mind shift. It's something that is cultural. The fact that we do not practice it, you know, leaves us at that stage of ignorance. And the moment whatever it's going to take for us to shift from the place where women representation is, or gender inclusion is, it's going to require so much of these lessons, and not just learning them, inculcating them probably in curriculums. If they don't go into curriculums, at least into policy documents across all sectors. So when you were presenting, I was seeing the big gap that exists and why we are not getting to where we are supposed to be when it has to do with inclusive budgeting. Do you understand? So this led us to the choice of our second topic that has to do with women in governance, that has to talk about participation in politics, so that we see how to bridge this existing gap of budgets that are very inclusive. We have realized in our studies over time that um, most policies or most budgets, I mean, most problems in the society do not get solutions or do not get attention because they are not reflected in the budget. And you require certain number of persons, to be in those positions of decision making and policy making in order to reflect these problems in the budget. You made mention of something that is really very critical, and that is when we open a budget and we will look at the budget, we see who is there and we see who is not there. And among all the budgets that will exist, the problems of the vulnerable group, the youth, the women, the children, we hardly see them. We see budgets that reflect, say infrastructure, certain kind of infrastructure that are still not even inclusive, but that will help rather show, I have come to do this, so I am the political person on seat, currently, and it just represents personal interests, what people want to gain, who are in politics or who are in power. But thank God we are getting beyond that. And towards pushing in that direction, our next speaker is an active person within the space, in gender, um, with respect to women participation in politics through her work. Her name is Dr. Susan Oshanya Agada, and she is an experienced gender expert with extensive expertise in gender equality and social inclusion across humanitarian and development programs. She holds a PhD in the Society and Development Studies and a master's degree in development management. Her work focuses on strengthening women's inclusion in governance and political processes, promoting women's participation in peace building, and addressing harmful gender norms that affect vulnerable groups across communities in Nigeria. She has supported gender equality programming across multiple sectors. Mrs. Agada has contributed to several national and subnational projects funded by international partners, including the United Nations, USAID, the European Union, DFID, Global Affairs Canada, the Government of the Netherlands, and the Federal Government of Nigeria. Her work spans areas such as such as women's political participation, women, peace and security, civil society strengthening, prevention and response to sexual and gender-based violence, sexual and reproductive health and rights, child protection, humanitarian protection, women's economic empowerment, counter trafficking, and maternal and child health. What a wealth! She currently works with UN Women Nigeria Country Office in the governance, women's political empowerment thematic area, driven by a strong commitment to advancing global change through impactful service to communities and vulnerable groups. And it also interests me also to say that Susan Agada, doctor, we have had the opportunity to work with her while she worked with USAID, Palladium, and currently still working with her while she's working here in UN Women. And so it is this world of knowledge that she's got an experience that we have, as partners, invited her to walk us through, what she has been doing, what the UN as well and other civil society organizations and international body are doing with respect to advancing women participation in politics. As the topic would have it, amplifying women's political inclusion as a pathway to gender responsive governance in Nigeria. So it's my honor to invite to the stage, um, well, Mrs. Susan Agada has a meeting right now, and it is her colleague in the UN who is also still our colleague on our project who will be speaking on her behalf. And afterwards, we will continue with the panel session. And so it's my pleasure, on behalf of Mrs. Susan Agada, my pleasure to welcome Folashade, Program Officer at the UN Women Office. Folashade, you are welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Efai, and thank you everyone for having me on board. It is a pleasure to be here, and I hope that this afternoon we are able to, flesh out some of these issues that have over time bedeviled our country as a whole, and hopefully we are able to also come up with tangible solutions to address these issues. Like Mr. Ifeanyi rightly said, my name is Folashade. My name is Folashade Folorunso, and I'll be standing in for Dr. Susan Agada this afternoon. She sincerely sends her apologies, but she will be joining us any moment from now. I'll be taking our presentation right now as we speak. This afternoon, we are looking at a topic that is actually very, very, falls in line and aligns with the global theme that is currently being, advanced at the moment. That's rights, justice, action for all women and girls. Looking at what are the rights, what are the justice steps to be taken, and what actions, to advance to ensure that gender equality is achieved across the globe. And this afternoon, we are looking at a topic from margins to mandates, women's political inclusion as a pathway to gender responsive governance in Nigeria. While I go deeper into this, I want us to first of all look at what is the diagnostics. It's been about 27 years of democracy since 1999. What is the gender gap? We need to really call ourselves, to order and give ourselves reality check, basing our conversation around the data on women's political representation in Nigeria. The current statistics between 2023 and 2026 states that despite women being 49% of the population, women hold less than 5% of legislative seats, which is post-2023 elections. This is very, very dismal. It's very dismal. It does not reflect a really gender responsive country as a whole. And it's so sad that Nigeria is termed giant of Africa, but Nigeria still lags behind when it comes to political representation, women political representation. It seems to be that we take a step forward and we take several steps backward. And comparing, women's representation in the Fourth Republic versus what we now have now, it seems like Nigeria keeps regressing. So what exactly is the problem? Why do we keep having these issues? Another big thing is that executive exclusion. How many female governors have we had since the return to democracy in 1999? How many female commissioners are in state cabinet at the moment? The numbers are dismal, to say the least. Political exclusion in Nigeria isn't just an accident. Some may say that it is an intentional design to keep women, relegated when it comes to having a voice, having that agency, and being able to actually speak to issues that concerns and affects women, and not just women alone, women and children specifically. We cannot achieve gender responsive governance if women are not in the room where these key decisions have been made. Going on from there, we need to also look at what is the anatomy of exclusion, the three-headed monster. How does it even look like? These issues, these gaps that have been identified, how does it look like? What does it entail? The first one is we have structural barriers. There seems to be existing structures that keep women at bay, that have actually delineated and said, okay, women cannot go beyond this level. The first one is within political parties. There are party gatekeepers. How many women can actually enter into political parties and function effectively? It is very evident that political parties in Nigeria are known as men's club. Godfatherism is the in thing. If you don't have a godfather, you can't function effectively. And even the godfather dictates how far you can fly. We also have structural issues like incumbency factor, the difficulty of unseating male incumbents who control state resources. We know that within the state structure, we have more men in power. At the federal level, at the state level, even up onto the local government level, we have more men in power. It is difficult to unseat men that see it as their birthright to hold position of leadership. The second barrier can be seen from the cultural perspective. That's the good woman trope. There's this cultural expectation that women should be submissive. You must not be ambitious. You cannot afford to be vocal. If you're vocal, you're seen as being too loud. You don't have respect. You're doing more than yourself. Who will marry you? For those that are married, you cannot stay in a husband's house. Those terms are given to women that are even trying to, break out from these shields and from these barriers that have hitherto held them down. And it seems like the society just aligns, whether it is right or wrong. These barriers keep, over the years, it looks like we're taking a step forward and we take 10 steps backward. It keeps being there. Even within the school system, the SUG system, you have people during campaign seasons, you have people, just bad-mouthing young girls who even say that, okay, I want to run for office. You get them saying, oh, you are Shewo, you are this, you are that. you're
Yes.
this, you're that. We also have issues around credibility gap. How do voters perceive men and women? Oftentimes, voters, there's this saying that, women are emotive, women are so emotional, men are more logical, which is to a very large extent somewhat fallacious because it has to do with the context, the situation. Oftentimes voters perceive men as being very decisive, while women are soft. Women cannot take hard decisions. Women are malleable. Women can easily be, bent. When it comes to taking key decisions, women are seen as not being able to make those strategic decisions, which in itself may not even be true, because not every person is the same. We have different upbringings, we have different exposures, we have different things that make us humans. Another barrier that keeps holding women down is economic barriers. The cost of entry. In Nigeria, politics is heavily monetized. Even for men itself, it is expensive. Not to now talk of women that do not really have access, you know, access to the kind of funds that men are able to pull, the resources men are able to pull, the monetization of politics, and the astronomical cost of nomination forms and campaigning. These are entry barriers that already limit women rather, from having access, to from being able to effectively run for office or being able to effectively say that they want to represent or campaign or go through the political process. Another economic barrier that hinders women is access to capital. Like I said earlier, women have limited access to the networks of wealthy donors. They have limited access to resources. Unlike the men who are able, they have that social capital because of their experience. They've been in this game for so long. They've been able to build that social capital and they're able to harness resources, to keep them in the game. Women are quite limited when it comes to this. What then is the cost of exclusion? Why gender-blind budgets fail? We all know that when women are absent from decision-making tables, budgets become gender-blind. And I'm so grateful for the earlier presenter who talked extensively about gender-responsive budgeting. When budgets do not reflect gender inclusivity, there's no way the country or the nation can move forward. There's no way development, will be reflective of, there's no way development would be at par at the rate that it should be. And that is why it seems like Nigeria keeps failing when it comes to decision making, when it comes to actually having effective social coherence in terms of deploying solutions for social issues, because specific needs of half of the population are often ignored. When budget is gender blind, it will evidently fail. Now, to be able to link effectively gender-based violence prevention and justice, it is very important to ensure that budgets, are gender neutral. We need to also understand that our budgets are able to allocate funds for operationalizing the VAP Act. Issues like police training on gender-based violence, we should be able to ensure that survivor support funds are, evident. In terms of infrastructure, our budget as it stands, are they prioritizing street lighting in high-risk areas? You would hear, for instance, in Abuja, you would hear of one chance, you would hear of, and most times it is women that are at higher risk of these issues. Sexual assault is on the rise. Referral centers are oftentimes not so funded. These are some of the issues that, are exacerbated when there's exclusion within the whole gender, when there's no gender responsive budgeting. There's also the issue of social sector deficit. The healthcare system is at an all-time low. You hear University of Ibadan Teaching Hospital, they are on strike. Nurses are on strike. Doctors are on strike. Everything, like, it seems that in the long run, the Nigeria's social space, socioeconomic space, keeps forming into a deeper rut than it was years ago. And this is traceable to the fact that one aspect of the gender is not reflected in governance in Nigeria. Because when you have women on board, when you have women that can speak truth to power, when you have women that are actually socially conscious of vices, of things that are affecting from the very nitty-gritty of the family, from the family level as a unit up onto the national level, when you have women on board, they'll be able to speak to healthcare, to education. Budgets would be prioritized from primary level to university level. Social infrastructure will be prioritized. And this would directly impact, if the education level is prioritized, healthcare level is prioritized, and access to funds is prioritized, resource allocation is actually gender reflective, it would directly impact the rate of development of the nation. Now, this brings us to a question. Can Nigeria truly claim to be fighting gender-based violence if its budget, the budget allocated, is more to security votes than to survival support services? We claim every year, we are pro women, we are pro women issues. We are the government keeps saying, now, I mean, this is CSW. The government keeps saying that we have done this, we have done that, we have psychosocial support. But if you look at the kind of budget, it's, if you weigh to what is being given to security votes, for instance, of course, security votes security issues affect both genders. It is not to downplay it, but what we're saying here is that some issues are immediate. Some issues are so next to skin that if you don't tackle it, or if it is not, budgeted for adequately, it has a ripple effect, and it even increases the security, it worsens the security situations that we keep having heavy votes for. Now, the mandate in action, the influence of women legislators. What can women legislators do, or what should they be doing? Let us look at it from the 8th and 9th Assembly. We've seen what has been done in countries like Rwanda, South Africa, and some other countries in terms of how women have been able to inform policies that have had, positive effects on the life of the people. And this shows a direct correlation between female representation and social spending. For instance, in the 9th Assembly, bills like the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill, were on the floor of the Assembly. Even though it did not get majority votes, even though it was thrown out, we could see that women made moves. Women within the legislature, the civil society space, people worked tirelessly to ensure that, bills like the GEO bill, come to the fore, come to the light. And it's increased conversations around, quota system, affirmative action. Also, in terms of constituency projects, how do female lawmakers allocate constituency funds? Evidence suggests that a higher propensity is often towards health centers, schools, and skills acquisition centers, compared to men who often focus on infrastructure contracts. So women don't just bring women's issues to the table. They bring a different lens. They are able to look at issues from all angles. not just focusing on security, but looking at security, the economy, the infrastructure, the wellness of children, how to ensure that education is streamlined is tailored to meet the needs of the nation as a whole. So what is the way forward? There's the general elections, the 2027 general elections is around the corner. What can we do to ensure that women have a say, have a seat, and they have a voice, and they're able to influence change? What structural reforms can be done for 2027 and beyond? We need to move from voluntary party gestures to constitutional mandates. We know that in the past few months, we've had a very explosive campaign around the special seats bill. We've had women movements work day and night to ensure that, there's that constitutional alteration that reserves additional seats for women. These are some of the things, that could be done to ensure that women have a seat at the table. But it seems to be that there's been a sort of a slowdown on that push for the special seats bill. And I'm sure this is not from the women. And this pushback seems to be coming from the National Assembly itself, because as of now, constitutional amendment issues are no longer being prioritized, and the rundown to the general election seems to be a major priority, and we run the risk of actually losing that team, the momentum that has been built. Another way is through a compulsory 35%, quota in party candidates list. Right now, beginning from next month, party primaries would be starting. A host of political parties will be having their conventions. Party primaries will be starting and all that. This is the time to advocate for inclusion of women, reservation of particular numbers, percentages by political parties for candidates. This cannot be done by one person alone. This cannot be done by just a single voice advocating for it. It is a collective action. Like the theme of this year's International Women's, Day is rights, justice, action. This is the time to collectively ask for the rights of women. It is not about tokenism. It is not about, just give it to women, let them just have it. It is about being consensus, being able to have that voice and say that in my own time, I advocated for this and we were able to get this. We were able to ensure that a half of the population that had often been underrepresented is now fully represented. Another structural reform that can be done is through financing reforms, reducing candidates' fees, lobbying INEC and political parties to lower nomination fees for female aspirants. I'm not oftentimes a party to removing nomination fees for female aspirants, but at least if there could be a sort of leeway given to female aspirants to ensure that yes, for men and women, there may be disparity in the level of access to resources that they may have. But to ensure, like the earlier speaker said, equity, to ensure that everybody is able to access that opportunity in a way that does not undermine another. This is the time to lobby INEC and political parties to lower nomination fees for female aspirants. Also, proposing that parties receive public financing based on how many women they elect, as well as Electoral Act amendments pre-2027. Of course, the Electoral Act was just recently passed, and some of the issues that were being advocated for had been tackled. But still, Nigerians are not still satisfied with the Electoral Act as it is, because it is not all the prayers of Nigerians that have been effectively answered in the recently amended Electoral Act. So One of the key issues is banning godfatherism and money back politics. I know it's not a lot of people that would agree with this because, I mean, oftentimes you hear people say that even in America, there are godfathers everywhere. But there is a way that it can be structured that it would not influence, heavily impact on governance, as it is doing in Nigeria. Stricter enforcement of internal party democracy to ensure women have a fair shot at primaries. At this point, I would like to call all of us to action. Beginning from the National Assembly, we need to be able to turn our mandate into motion. From the National Assembly to pass the special seats for women bill. It is a timely bill. It is a bill that would have a ripple effect across development in Nigeria. The National Assembly should take it as a priority to ensure that the special seats for women bill is prioritized. This is not something that, unlike what was done in 2022, I want to believe that women are tired of, having to keep going back begging and begging and begging. Moreover, the special seat for women bill is a temporary measure. It's a temporary measure that sought to, that seeks to correct this gap within the next couple of years. So it's just a call to the National Assembly to prioritize the special seats bill and bring it to the front burner again. To INEC and political parties to please implement and enforce the national gender policy, which would be running out this 2026 and is presently being considered for a review. To use their power to democratize primaries, to civil society organizations, to shift focus from voter education alone to candidate preparation and litigation. Because, of course, how many women can actually go to court to seek redress? We saw what happened in 2023 in Cross River State, where a woman was sacked and she lost her position through, litigation. How many women are able to actually appeal such courts, injunctions and all that? And to the media to stop covering female candidates' looks or marital status, cover their manifestos. To the general electorate to vote for competence, not just familiarity. Trust women with power. For us at UN Women, we are always ready, open, and ever ready to work with women that are running for office or aspire to run for office. We work with Nigeria as a government. We work with Nigeria to ensure that national priorities that concerns gender equality are brought to the front burner. We support Nigeria to ensure that issues surrounding women and girls, are prioritized. Thank you so much for having me, and that'll be all from my end.
Hi, Folashade from UN Women. Thank you so much for this robust and insightful session, sharing with us on how to amplify or the amplification, of women inclusion in political participation. We are no longer just talking about women participation in leadership, because if we look at leadership right now, both within Nigeria and globally, we see, okay, let's speak of Nigerians alone. We will notice that women are driving leadership processes, driving conversations. Women are leaders at several spheres, both in the UN and in so many places. So, are we asking ourselves, is this kind of corporate form of leadership enough, you know, to to help for driving complete inclusion when it has to do with ending gender-based violence, when it has to do with ending gender inequality? No. So that is why we're having these conversations about women inclusion in politics. There is general leadership in corporate, for corporate sphere. and there is that leadership in the political position. And this is our focus today. If we get it right, whereby the special seats bill is passed, and we're not just ending here, and we're having women to come out to to lead in decisions around policies that will affect women, that will affect several things, not just women, even men, society at large. I think it's not that I think, it is certain that it's going to help a lot. First of all, in the general phase of, percentage rating in gender inclusivity, at least Nigeria will be rated 1. But unfortunately, where we are, I don't even think we're up to 5% when it has to do with gender inclusion, especially in political seats. Right from it's over 2 decades now, since the inception of democracy in Nigeria. So we will lament over and over with passion and how it's painful, but we will not end. So I want to use this opportunity to appreciate our speaker, our speakers. The both of you have done great. We are marrying 2 topics: funding, budgeting, and with the participation of women. Budget will not improve. The life of women and children will not improve if there is no budget that includes these needs. The budget that includes these needs that will solve that problem will not exist also if there are no decision makers who will lead the process. And I love this marriage, right now. So we have few minutes to go, and we will dive into questions. I know a lot of people who are out here listening have questions, have contributions, and I would love to give that opportunity. But firstly, Dr. Princess, one question to you, one question will go to Folashade, a question will go to the both of you, and the one that's going to the both of you, I'll throw it to the floor because I know we have quite a number of persons in this meeting that have vast experience in the conversation we are having. So I'm going to throw out these questions to you. First, to Dr. Princess. I don't know if you're there. Confirm, please. Hello? Mrs. Olufemi? Hello? Okay. I think probably you're just far from your device. Okay, so gender responsive budgeting is often discussed in policy circles. They are often discussed, but implementation remains limited. Please just give us one or two practical steps that governments and institutions take to institutionalize gender responsive budgeting across federal and state systems. I don't know if you got that, please.
Let me see. Can you hear me?
It's getting better, or you're still a little bit far from your device.
Okay, let me see. Let me just now.
Yes, perfect. Go ahead, please, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Okay, great, awesome. Using my headpiece naturally. Okay, so to institutionalize gender responsive budgeting, definitely we know that everything has to do with government, has to do with policies, or
Yes.
National Assembly being able to enact something that will give permission to the MDAs to go ahead,
Yes.
and of course, the governor are setting or the president are setting. So I think from the national level, which is where everybody adopts at the state level, there needs to be a law, an act that institutionalizes, because we have the national policies, but they are policies. They are not like acts
A lot. Yeah.
that says that okay, you've got to go through these processes when you're doing your budgeting. Somehow, either reintegrated into existing acts or law, or review, but something needs to be there on paper that makes it, lawful and legal. That if you don't do it, then you're in trouble. So that is for us as a nation, because everything goes through that level and then it becomes a law, and then we know that we can hold you accountable to say, why are we not seeing this in the budget? Because it has been made a law that you've got to go through this. You've got to go through these processes. And in terms of
Yeah.
highlighting those indicators in that law that talks about the process of gender responsive budgeting itself, where the gender analysis and all of that, and looking at the different issues and how it affects everybody, like we talked about inclusivity, inclusive, that brings in everybody, whether they are young people, whether they are women or they are girls or they are persons with disability, everybody cut across, it's covered in the
Yeah.
budget. Like we said, when you look at the budget, the question is who benefits and who doesn't, and who is
Mm.
left out. And so that's something that I believe that if they go that route, being our very dynamic country that we are, it's just got to be in black and white. And this is the process for budgeting. Yeah, or to be
Who
included in how.
appreciates?
Definitely we know CSO always does a lot of pushing, but I believe that yeah, there are ways to push this thing at the National Assembly. So that an independent person or it is the Ministry of Finance, there are ways to do it. Yeah, there are ways to do that. I don't even think that is even the issue. The issue
But
is
we
that
suffer
are we
punitive measures. We suffer lack of punitive measures, when it has to do with, doing what the book says, doing what the law
yes,
says. If the budget,
because
yes,
yeah, it's we have been a very careless set of people.
Virginia.
Um, we just speak, we say things. And like I said earlier, when I said we have a lot of policies, we have a lot of laws, but of course, okay, we have VAP. So is VAP happening? Is it being implemented? No.
Mm,
So I think it's basically, and then of course, do we have respect for the judiciary? And that question, in quotes, that even say, does the government respect the judiciary? There are those kind of those very serious conversations to really have for us as a people. It's not even it's us as Nigerians, really. It's us really
yeah.
looking, and then the electorate looking exactly what do we want, what kind of government do we want, and being serious about that aspect of that, to say what kind of government do we want? What a government who doesn't respect
Yeah.
justice, or is it so there's a lot of dynamics to it beyond even what coming to gender responsive budgeting. We have a lot of gaps and lapses, yes,
Mhm.
as a country. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for this intelligent response. My problem that I've realized growing up in Nigeria is that whenever we discover a problem, in order to find solution to it, it's like onions. You keep on peeling, I mean, you keep peeling and you keep finding bulk of problems
More
underneath.
layers, yes,
And so,
yes.
and what we now do from the space of onlooker, I mean, I don't want to say activists, but from the space of um, the general public or citizens, we get tired, you know, and all of that. But I hope that does not continue to be our phase. And one day, this will work. When it doesn't work and we've tried so hard, sometimes we want to put it into prayers. But then, thank you so much, ma'am, for that was on a lighter note. Thank you for this intelligent response. So quickly, I'll go over to Folashade. I don't know if you're there. So I would like you please to share your collective experience working in governance and political participation programs. I know there's a lot of programs ongoing right now when it has to do with women participation in politics, since we've been preparing for this 2027 elections. Number one, I know for the preparation of these elections, you've been engaging practically and and to influence the outcomes of the election in 2027. We also have the government who have come to do constitutional reforms, and you also told yourselves, because I know we're working together, we also told ourselves that in order to get it right, in the electoral cycles and having women, we also have to get fully involved with the constitutional reform, especially when it has to do with everything gender and inclusion, women participation in politics. So please, without me saying anything around what you're doing, kindly share what you're doing, with you know, supporting women in running for political office, especially through the policy angle. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ifeanyi. Um, of course, UN Women has done quite a lot around supporting women, working on, political inclusion, women's representation in Nigeria. We work, and we're still working with different civil society organizations, women movements across the country, particularly in terms of, support to the Constitutional Review Committee, drafting, in terms of drafting the bills. We give support trainings to, um, members of the committee themselves and even the support staff to ensure that gender is highly reflected in their legal drafting. These are some of the things that we've done in terms of constitutional amendment. When it comes to looking at 2027 general election, of course, there are a lot of activities in place. There are a lot of plans to ensure that women are supported both as aspirants and candidates. There are issues around, getting different stakeholders together to ensure that stakeholders, donors, and groups, different groups and subgroups that are highly invested and have their resources, to put in place to ensure that women are supported as we move towards the 2027 general election. These are some of the things that we do to make sure that women are not marginalized. We work with IPAC, we work with political parties individually and collectively through IPAC. We work with INEC to ensure that gender is mainstreamed in all the processes. I want to believe that this answers some of your question. Sorry. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello? Oh yeah. Sorry, I thought I was not I was unmuted. I heard you loud and clear. Thank you so much, Flashade. I know when given the chance to really say all that you've been doing really great. And it's even the fact that you do not work alone and you work with CSOs in achieving so both at high level and at the grassroots. Congratulations for what you're doing. We hope that these electoral reforms, that is ongoing, sees the light of day. Firstly, talking about the bill's passage, I mean voting and passage, it is our prayer. We notice that a lot of bottlenecks and we keep shifting goalposts in order to score the goal, and we will not stop. When I say this is to say that we are trying to understand the dynamics of the politicians in Nigeria when it has to do with passing bills, passing laws, and all of that. Working with their psychics, sometimes their body language outside is yes, back in their dining tables is well, we'll see how it will be, you know. So it takes intuition, it takes mental energy, it takes money, resources, it takes partnership, it takes, well, spying, no, but it takes people put in strategic positions, to listen, to even have vital information, to know probably when they're going to sit and they're not expecting you to be there. It takes a lot of things. But does that get us tired? No, it will not get us tired, So the hallmark of this whole thing is that a budget will be better tomorrow if we have the right people working on those budgets, So thank you so very much. Now, I believe among our listeners, we have civil society organization representatives, we have individuals who probably are activists. And I want to throw that question out to you. It's a question of accountability, it's a question of responsibility, and I invite anybody available to answer to it. And the question is, what are you doing? I mean, just one simple sentence. What are you doing to have gender equality or equity in Nigeria? Number one. Number two, when it has to do with, when, when it has to do with inclusive budgeting, when it has to do with women participation in politics, If you see yourself as ordinary, there's something they tell us, even in church. Our pastor will advise us, dude, you're not too young to run. Even in church, they say, well, go into politics now, because when you go into politics, it is possible that the thing we are craving for, even around religion, it might be answered, because everything comes with policies. So the question out there is, what are you doing? So I'm inviting, the floor is open to everyone to make contributions and to say what they're doing. And we have 5 minutes for this. Over. Thank you. And I don't know if there are questions on the chat box.
What do you think?
Hello, please, you can unmute your mic, except if I call people, because I know there are thought leaders here, organizational leaders, institutional leaders that are here as well. I humbly recognize the presence of our FIDA International president. Sorry, FIDA National, FIDA, yes, our FIDA International, the president is here, and our CVP is here. Please, the floor is open. Contributions, questions, response to my question too. 3 more minutes.
Okay, let's see whether it balances out so far.
Sorry, let me just acknowledge the wonderful work that UN Women are doing. We as FIDA Nigeria are thoroughly enjoying their support, working in this area. We commend their effort, and FIDA Nigeria will continue to strive to accomplish, because we acknowledge the importance of women participation, and we're poised to do so much more with the continued support of UN Women. So I want to affirm that they're doing great work in this area. I want to also acknowledge the wonderful work that branches are doing in this respect, particularly those of them that are on this project. And so as we continue to challenge ourselves to do more, I appreciate the role that all of us are willing to play in making sure that come next year, we will see a turnaround in our desire to have more women politically participate in governance. Thank you.
Thank you, dear CVP. Please, the communications team, find out if there are any persons who would like to speak and probably they cannot unmute themselves. If we do not
All
have
right.
anybody,
Ifeanyi, let me also take the opportunity to thank you for moderating a wonderful session and to thank the speakers. These have been really interesting and impactful conversations that we have had this morning. And I'd like to commend FIDA Nigeria for always flying the FIDA flag high. FIDA International continues to be proud of you and of the work you do. Now, in relation to what your question, Ifeanyi, about what each and every one of us is doing on this issue. I think that the critical part, or from my perspective, is to ensure that each time there is an opportunity to choose people to undertake any kind of assignment, ensuring that there is a balance, ensuring that there is a minimum representation of women as part of whatever we're doing, so that we can ingrain that in the general discourse. And regarding the politics of next year, I think each and every one of us, at least from the Nigerian perspective, let us speak up and speak out to the persons in authority, people around us, encourage the women that we know so that they are strengthened in their resolve to continue with the race, because politics is tough and we all know that. So once again, thank you very much to the speakers, Princess Kayode and Susan Agada. You've done a great job this morning, and I have been thoroughly impressed by the conversations this morning. Kudos to FIDA Nigeria, and very best wishes to everyone. Thank you.
that's from our international, FIDA International, and that's the president. Thank you so much, Ma. It's good to know that you have this at the back of your mind. Number one, encouraging women to be in a leadership position. Number two, when we see an opportunity, the first thought should be a woman. I think there is no other thoughtful thoughts than this at this point, you know. Thank you so, so very much, ma'am. Okay. If no one else has anything to say, honestly, I would be very, very disappointed. But it's okay. I can understand maybe we have our fasting and some of us would like to run along. Before I welcome the closing remark, we still have an opportunity to speak. But then before then, I have this quote. I have these two quotes to share. One says, women's political inclusion gives women a voice and power, while gender responsive budgeting gives that voice the resources to create justice, equity, and national development. The other says true gender responsive governance happens when women move from the margins into political leadership and ensure that public budgets reflect the needs, rights, and aspiration of all. This is a quote. This is a quote that just marinates the entire conversation and just makes it sweet. Then the last is political inclusion places women in positions of influence. Gender responsive budgeting ensures that influence translates into equitable policies and real change. Thank you so, so very much. It has been an enriching conversation. And I want to call on my country vice president to please give us for our closing remark, please. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ifeanyi. You've done a wonderful job moderating. I want to sincerely, on behalf of FIDA Nigeria, appreciate everybody that has participated in this webinar, particularly our speakers who are here on this call. You've taken the time to go in depth, to share of your knowledge, to share of your experience, and we sincerely appreciate you. You've opened up areas for us as we continue our advocacy to be able to better impact and to strive better so that we can accomplish. I appreciate the fact that we have your support as collaborators, as partners in this work, and we cannot but appreciate you more. You've done a wonderful job today here, and FIDA Nigeria truly appreciates the support and the contributions that you have made here today. We accept the challenge that you have put before us and are committed to doing even greater, to ensure that our noble objective is accomplished. I want to appreciate our international officers on this call who, despite the amount of heavy load on their portfolio, they are still able to join. Honorable Inume is here also with us, and likewise our international president that has spoken to us and said a few things. Thank you all. We appreciate you. Our chairpersons, you're here on this call representing your respective branches. You have mobilized members. You're actively working on this. We cannot but be grateful. But to those who do well, more is expected. And I'm sure that listening to our wonderful speakers here today, your passion is increased, your commitment is enhanced to ensure that we are able to mobilize our respective branches across the 36 states, including the Federal Capital Territory, to do more, to make sure that those suggestions that have been tabled here today are indeed actioned out. Action is the key word. I want to appreciate our back office, those who are working behind the scene to make sure that this webinar, came to fruition and that we're able to do more. Our lovely members, great Amazons, how can we but not acknowledge and appreciate you? Thank you. Thank you, everybody on this call. And as we say, action is required of us. More action is required of us. Thank you, national officers, for this wonderful support in working with us to make sure that this is real. As we go forward, I encourage you all to action out a lot of these things. Do it collectively, do it privately, personally, and see how we can bring more women politicians to the table. Congratulations to us all, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CVP. Thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you to our speakers. You've done really wonderful, and we believe that this partnership and this relationship we have will not end, because these resources need to continually be shared, for learning purposes and for actions. Thank you, dear CVP, for the call to action and the conscientizing us of our responsibilities. On behalf of the whole team, I promise that we will go to the field and we will act, to be accountable and to be responsible. Thank you so much, and have a very wonderful evening. Thank you. Good night.
I'm to be a commodity, part recreation, part reproduction. I'm to be a currency, a prize to pride over masculinity. I'm to be all I am told to be. But today, I'm everything I'm not supposed to be. I'm a glitch in societal programming. I'm becoming a bug in the system. I'm a crack in the matrix wall. I'm a wrecking ball, smashing doors, smashing laws. I'm a crack code, reading status quo. I go, breaking iron bars and glass ceilings. I'm demanding, intruding, overcoming the lies and the prejudice. And no, I'm not easy. I'm busy. Making waves, making ways, making space in this place, in this room, in this world. I'm empowered to empower and inspire representation, inclusion, mutual respect. I'm direct impact on society. I'm equality. I am woman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to be in your midst today. The title of my spoken word piece proper is Society Says. And here it goes. Society says the woman is the weaker sex, that her meekness, sweetness is nothing but a display of weakness, that her emotions are unnecessary, yet her existence is necessary for satisfaction, reproduction, and even recreation. Society says a woman should know her place, and her place is behind every great man, behind every great cosmetic can, behind every closed door. Society says a woman's place is not in the boardroom or the courtroom, that her place is in the bedroom, the kitchen, the garden, and wherever, as long as it is within the confinement of a home. Society says a woman's place is the home. Society says it is okay to fly, but not too high, not too out there, not too revealing, not past the glass ceiling, not past the law, not past the iron bars that bar even our nerves to dream. Society says it is okay to dream, but hands are a handful of limitations. Society says it is okay to lead, but questions her leadership inclinations. Society is why she's on the news, subject to rape, subject to abuse, why her body lays lifeless at thought avenue, subdued. Society is why her gender is treated like a liability. Well, society says what society says, and I say what I say, and I say the woman is human. Not less human, not a trophy. Not some prize to pride over masculinity. Her femininity is not fragility. Forged from bones, head to skin tone. Her grace greets, radiates even to her bones. Yes, a breathing piece of art, yet no mundane artistic piece. No, she is God's masterpiece. She is flawless. Dear society, it's about time. It's about time you allow this truth that this bias status quo you built to suit yourself is by itself crumbling. Your flawed, perfect picture of pink and blue is an illusion.